Senator Nash.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Gentlemen, can I just take you to our beef trade with South Korea? I just noticed that on your website you've got the beef exports between Australia, I think, and South Korea at 770 million. Over what period was that?
You should just bear with me, Senator. The export statistics are being updated on a regular basis, so it depends on what the latest statistic is.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm after.
Yeah, I'm afraid, actually, I don't have the figures. I haven't seen the figures, the most recent ones on the website. But what we'll do is we'll check it up and come back to you in the next 20 minutes or so, if you like.
Okay. Okay. Could I ask you then, while you're doing that, sort of disappointing, you can't tell me that straight away. I would have thought that would have been something easily obtainable. The MLA has stated that the beef exports to South Korea are 632 million. So what I'm trying to determine if the disparity in figures is simply a measurement assessment issue from each of the parties, or if there's an actual discrepancy in one of the figures, one of them isn't actually correct. So if you could look at that, for me.
And if we can't, Senator, then we're certainly happy to take a notice and explain any differences between statistics that are being used. But as you know, there are different statistics available, and it may just be a difference in the time period or the definition of what's covered. So.
Exactly why I was asking the question. Thank you very much, because I would hate to assume anything. Always best to ascertain the correct answer. Can I just ask you, in terms of, and it was a question I was discussing earlier in the week with the Department of Agriculture, what's the process for the Department of Trade in terms of, I guess, cross-portfolio discussions, particularly with foreign affairs, when it comes to potential impact on a trade? Is there a certain process that is followed from the department in ensuring the oversight of that type of information?
Yes, certainly. If it's a trade negotiation, then the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade are the lead negotiators.
Oh, sorry. I think you might have misunderstood me. Sorry. Just in terms of trade in general. So we have various trade relations with various countries. So my question went more to what sort of process is in place to, with the relationship with the Department of Foreign Affairs, so you can keep track of any of those potential impacts that may have an impact on the current trading relationships.
Well, we work very closely with the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, and we work on a daily basis with them. And that cooperation with them on market access issues extends across negotiations. It extends to the role that DFAT posts and heads of mission, and in a number of posts, DAF councillors or minister councillors play in managing and pursuing our agricultural trade interests.
Okay, so in terms of foreign affairs issues, do you view differently when there's unrest within a particular company in another country, or do you only pay attention if a government has raised concern about a particular issue?
I'm not really sure what you're getting at.
It's fairly straightforward. If there is an individual corporation in another nation that has a problem with Australia in some way, shape or form with our government, is that of a concern to you in general on potential impact in trade, or do you only pay attention if the government itself of that foreign nation raises concerns?
No, we would assess, in bilateral terms, we would assess whatever issues arise to see what the possible impact would be.
Okay, so then the issue I have been raising of the cancelled self-propelled howitzer bid from South Korea by Samsung Techwind, even though that's not a government-to-government concern, as I've been led to believe, is that then something taking into account what you've just said, that individual entities' concerns are also taken into account by the Department of Trade. Is that something that you've taken into account since I last raised it when it wasn't a concern to the Department of Trade?
Well, I was in the last estimates hearing, and I do recall the exchange, and I think that the answers that we provided then are the same as today, that this issue has not been raised in the context of other trade issues.
Okay, so, and I think we did have an initial discussion around this basis, and I guess I'm just clarifying, and I suspect you're going to give me the same answer. Unless a corporation or a foreign government directly raises an issue with you, then it's not of a concern to the Department of Trade in terms of potential impact on our trade relations.
I think we're always very conscious, Senator, of potential impacts on our trade. So we try and deal and manage with those issues, either predicting them or managing it when they emerge. Okay.
So being conscious of the potential impacts on trade, would a South Korean company pulling out of a bid with Australia citing sovereign risk, and I quote Poonsang Corporation, "The sovereign risk the Australia program represent to Korean companies has become too large to ignore." Is that something that you're conscious of the impacts on trade? Is that something that's rung any alarm bells for you?
As I said, what we do is look at the facts, and in this case we have not seen any broader threat to other trade issues. They have not been raised with us in a sense, and our assessment is that this is an issue. We understand that the company was disappointed, but again, if you're asking us...
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, I just need to clarify. I'm not talking about Samsung Techwin here, I'm talking about Poonsang. They withdrew from bid. That's a separate issue entirely, and they've cited sovereign risk.
Yeah, I'm not actually personally familiar with that particular case. So.
Page 3 of the Financial Review, and you're not aware of it? Does nobody read the paper in the department? Anyone? Bueller?
I think many people in the department read the newspaper, Senator.
Actually,
likes websites.
Thank you for the assistant, Senator Kroger. Seriously, an article that was page 3 on the Financial Times and the Financial Review, and you're not aware of the issue. Did nobody? How many people work in your department?
No, well, I said I'm personally not aware of that.
No, I realise that. And sorry, what's your position? I can't. I'm only asking that genuinely. I can't see.
I'm the acting deputy secretary.
Acting deputy secretary. How many staff have you got in your department?
Senator, can I just say that...
No, that's a number question. How many staff do you have in your department?
The total number in Canberra is approximately 800.
800 people in your department, and nobody alerted you to a page 3 Financial Review article with a company citing the difficulties they saw with Australia as a sovereign risk.
I'm afraid
Seriously?
that is the case, yes.
Wow. Okay, could I then perhaps ask if you could take on notice to ask somebody in your department to bring this to your attention, and if you could provide the committee with a response as to your response as to the significance of that particular article. And I do have to note, don't feel too bad, because the Minister didn't know about it either when I asked him in question time, so he'd missed page 3 of the Financial Review as well, so don't feel too bad. Can I ask just finally about the free trade agreement, where the free trade agreement is at with South Korea at the moment?
Sure. If I could just say that we are continuing to work towards concluding the bilateral FTA with Korea as soon as possible. There are, as we've explained before, a number of sensitive issues still unresolved. In December, of course, there was the election of a new Korean president, and the transition to the new administration following Ms Park's inauguration on the 25th of February has had an impact obviously on our capacity to engage with the new government, because the new government hasn't come into force yet.
Okay. When did South Korea sign the free trade agreement with the US?
I believe it was 2000 and... the issue is not actually when it was signed, but when it actually came into force.
No. My question was when it was signed.
Yes,
my
okay.
next question was going to be, when did it come into force?
I will just ask my colleague. We'll give you an answer in just a second. I don't have it at my fingertips.
Okay, perhaps if somebody could be kind enough to pop up those very straightforward figures, that would be useful.
Could I just say that Chorus actually entered into force on the 15th of March 2012.
Okay. So, obviously the advantage that the US now has, I think the tariffs dropped to 34% or something like that. What were the assumptions at the time what effect that would have, given the competitive advantage that the US would have over Australia from that coming into force? From the department's perspective, what was the assessment of what impact that would have on our trade into South Korea?
Well, clearly, as in any case where somebody has an FTA that another country does not have, it results in reductions or elimination of tariffs for one particular country or two particular countries if it's a bilateral FTA. And if you don't enjoy the same thing because you don't have an FTA, then there will be tariff differentials. That apply.
So now that we're nearly a year down the track, in a practical sense, what have you seen as the results of that? Have there been particular instances, you say, where we've been at a disadvantage because of the advantage that the US has?
Well, there are a range of products where the US will have a tariff advantage over Australia because we don't have an FTA with them.
Can you take on notice for me then, just one tick, can you take on notice for me then what you see as what those advantages have been over the last 12 months for the US and provide that to the committee? Did you want something on that? I've nearly finished, Senator Heaven, or specific?
I'll just add a tail into it.
Yeah, okay.
Might be live and people up with it.
And just on that, and I asked that specifically as a farmer from New South Wales, that I have a while I don't farm beef, I certainly have a particular interest for my colleagues out in regional Australia who do. So they're very important questions for a lot of people, and I recognise in Senator Heffernan's communities as well. Can I just ask you, the investor-state dispute settlement mechanism that South Korea wants to be in the FTA, is that the sticking point? Is that what's holding it up, and what's our view on that?
There's a handful of issues. That is one of the issues at play. Also, the actual terms of access for beef is another one into the Korean market, and also tariffs on automotive products for imports of cars from Korea into Australia is another one of the issues that are still outstanding.
All right. Minister, did you want to add anything to that? I mean, why doesn't the government want the mechanism to be included? Can you explain that for us?
No, I'll take that on notice, Senator.
You take it on notice? Surely you'd be able to answer that now, Minister. Is that a you can't answer it or you won't answer it?
Minister?
It's a very important piece of paper you're reading there, Minister, isn't it?
Minister?
I have nothing to add, Chair. Nothing to add.
No, you didn't say anything. You've actually not got anything to add, Minister, because you didn't actually have an answer to add to. I think that is extraordinary that you can't give us an indication of why the government does not want that mechanism included in the FTA. That is extraordinary. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Could I ask if you could look at the particular issue, as I said, of Ping Sang Corporation citing sovereign risk, and perhaps everyone might be a little more diligent at passing on what's in the papers to those a little higher up the chain in the department. Thank you very much for your accommodation, Chair.